So, conceptual part, which topics are there for the conceptual part in economy? There are three important chapters that you need to follow. One is money and banking. Money and banking is the most important topic.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss an update from Prep Ladder.
In this video, I am going to discuss about the important topics that you need to follow for the UPSC Preliminary Exam 2023. I am Vivek Singh, Faculty of Economics at Prep Ladder. Please keep on following our YouTube channel for recent updates. So, let me talk about the topics that you need to follow for economics for the preliminary exam. See, as such, you must have seen the last few years question papers, and if you see the trend is shifting towards conceptual questions. Around 20 questions are asked generally from economy subject, and out of these 20 questions, around 16 to 17 questions are concept based, and hardly 2-3 questions UPSC is asking about the current affairs. So, what I mean to say is that you need to focus more on the conceptual part. So, conceptual part, which topics are there for the conceptual part in economy? There are three important chapters that you need to follow. One is money and banking. Money and banking is the most important topic, or you can say chapter, it's a broad topic that you need to follow for the prelims. Now, in money and banking, if you want to break it down, the most important topics in money and banking, the first is financial markets and money market. And in money, see, in these years, what UPSC is doing is that they are asking more in depth. They are going more into the conceptual details. So, just reading summary is not going to help you in the preliminary exam for economy questions. You need to read each and every bit of detail of any topic, whatever you are following. For example, if you are reading money market, then what are the money market instruments? What is the tenure for which it is issued? Who issues it? Whether it is secured, unsecured. So, every bit of detail should be clear from these things, and you need to also understand that these topics are very practical and these things are going on presently in the economy. What UPSC is doing is, suppose certain issue related to monetary transmission is going. Now, they may not ask exactly that issue, they may be asking the concept behind that issue. So, sometimes current based questions are also coming from these topics, but mostly these topics are relevant for the conceptual things. Then, other than the money market and financial markets, you need to focus on the securities part, government securities, different kinds of government securities. Then you must also understand about the details of the money supply, monetary base and money multiplier, because these things post demonetization, these things have become quite important for the understanding of the economy, and they are very practical also, and currently issues related to these things are also going on. So, these terms should be very clear in mind, and how one term is related to another, how the change in one term is impacting other, that also you need to follow. Then the other topics related to banking structure, banks and non-banks, these institutions structure and what every institution does. For example, all the financial institutions, you know that it's divided into banks and non-banks. Now, what kind of banks? What are the basic functions of banks? Under banks, you need to focus on commercial and cooperative. So, each and everything should be followed in detail. Then the other topics that you need to follow is like foreign investment and exchange rate. As you know that in the last few months, a lot of foreign portfolio investors have moved out of India. So, this is an information. Now, what is the concept behind it? That you need to understand in more detail. Why they are running out? What will happen if the RBI will increase the repo rate? Why they are running out of India? Because US Fed is increasing the rate. What India can do to bring them back? So, all these concepts need to be followed properly. Then, the most hot topic that is presently going on since last few months is inflation. So, inflation, as you know, that WPI is in double digits and CPI is, of course, it has breached the band which RBI has tried to put into like 4% plus minus 6%. So, what are the reasons that it is increasing? And it has also been discussed in economic survey. So, there is an issue and there are concepts behind that issue. You need to be clear about the both, because the trend is not to ask the current issue, but rather the concept related to that issue. These things UPSC is doing. So, focus on this money and banking chapter in too much detail, because every year whatever questions are being asked in economy, more than 50% questions are from this chapter, and there are a lot of concepts involved. Then from GDP fundamentals, mostly you need to follow about the GDP basic concepts, national income, whether it is increasing, decreasing, growth, recession, are we in slowdown, are we achieving economic growth, plus the last 10 years trend. UPSC is not going to ask you about the specific 1 year data, but last year trends for investment, for economic growth, for capital formation, that's basically investment only. So, last 10 years trend of relevant, for example, last 10 trends of exports, imports, trade, these trends also need to be followed, because these kind of questions are coming in the UPSC exam. Then the most important term related to GDP and growth is savings also. So, how savings is related to ICOR, incremental capital output ratio. So, capital output ratio, ICOR, these are also very relevant terms. You need to also focus on these things, because investment and these things are related, and it is quite highlighted in the economy. Then coming to the budget and tax part, regarding budget, fiscal policy, FRBM, these are very important topics. What changes have been done in FRBM, what are the targets, whether government has been able to achieve that target or not, these are very important terms. In FRBM, there is one macroeconomic parameter called debt. Now, debt is a very important statistics for UPSC for the prelims exam. For example, in debt, you need to know what is the government of India debt, what is the state government debt, and regarding these data, you don't need to know the absolute things, but percentage wise, like debt as a percentage of GDP. So, government of India debt, state government's debt, domestic debt, external debt, sovereign debt, these things should be very clear. Regarding corporate sector debt like ECBs, masala bonds, all these concepts plus its impact on exchange rate, its impact on inflation, its impact on other domestic parameters, all these things you need to follow in a related manner. Then of course, direct and indirect taxes, certain things you know that what are the major taxes that government is collecting, whether our tax has increased in the COVID period or not, GST concepts. For example, whether the GST council recommendation is binding or not. So, these things need to be covered for the prelims exam. So, major topics, I would say that 70 to 80% of the economy questions that UPSC is asking is from these three topics: GDP fundamentals, money and banking, and government budgeting, tax policy. Few questions are also coming from scheme based, like agriculture schemes, supply chain schemes. Now, in agriculture scheme, what you need to do is whatever are the schemes that have been launched in the last 2-3 years. For example, MSP related things, who recommends, who approves, how many crops. Then last 2 years, Atmanirbhar Bharat, whatever schemes have been launched like agriculture infrastructure fund, animal husbandry infrastructure fund, these things need to be covered. In supply chain, there are various schemes that government has launched like Sampada scheme, PM Matsya Sampada Yojana, then Operation Flood. So, and one important scheme, formalization of micro food processing enterprises. These schemes needs to be covered, and in schemes, you don't need to go in too much detail, but there are 2-3 keywords that you need to do is what is the purpose of this scheme, what is the target segment of this scheme, and in which ministry this scheme is related to, through which ministry it is related to. So, these agriculture and supply chain schemes plus one other chapter from where UPSC is asking questions almost every year is the WTO chapter, WTO, IMF and World Bank. Now, in WTO, IMF and World Bank, you don't need to go into the issues and challenges, just the information part. Information part means from these chapters, WTO asking questions related to terms. For example, TRIPS related terms, peace clause, IMF related terms like SDR quota. So, only terms related things, information related things, these things need to be followed. So, even if you have just covered this for once, these terms, you will be able to handle these questions. So, I believe that if you cover these things properly, you will be able to, if the UPSC asks suppose 20 questions, you will be able to handle 15-16 questions. And I would also suggest that don't try to cover every question. You won't be able to mark all the 20 questions. Be ready to leave 1 or 2 questions, because generally 1 or 2 questions they will always put such that it's very difficult to handle. So, don't worry about that. Even if you take 18 questions, that's best. And in economy, you can do that, because if your concepts are clear, you will be able to handle these questions. So, that is all from my side. Please cover these topics what I just said properly, and I hope that you will be able to handle the economic questions. Thank you.